Bitcoin denominated assets. I saw this tweet from our boy Munib Ali on Twitter, and it got me thinking. I wrote about it this morning. If you look at Bitcoin denominated assets, what we have learned is that every asset in the financial system is normally denominated in dollars. And so if you think about the dollar over some sort of other asset, you are basically trying to measure the appreciation or depreciation of that asset against the dollar. The problem with doing that is that the dollar is not a stable value. There's over 38% of all dollars in circulation that have been entered in the last 18 months. So the dollar has been rapidly depreciating. And so of course, asset prices are going to go up. The dollar depreciates, the asset gets stronger against that dollar. So it's very hard to normalize over years and years and years or decades what is the price of these assets. And so this is a great example where Munib was able to say, okay, well, what is the S&P 500 denominated in Bitcoin? Well, guess what? The S&P 500 has been crashing against Bitcoin for the last decade. It is just down and to the right. Literally, Bitcoin is eating the S&P 500. When you denominate every single financial asset in Bitcoin rather than in dollars, they're all crashing. The financial wherewithal of these portfolios when it's denominated in Bitcoin versus dollars is atrocious. Every asset is down. Now, what happens is when we denominate it in dollars, it looks like all the asset prices are going up. Real estate is going up, stocks are going up, commodities are going up, other currencies are going up, etc. That is because the dollar is being devalued at an incredible pace. When you denominate it in something like digital sound money, Bitcoin, they are all down significantly. And so what that reminds us is that when you look at the price of a financial asset, you have to ask yourself, not only what is the asset that I'm looking at, but what is the currency in which it is being denominated? Because if that currency is being devalued at a historic pace, like we are seeing with the US dollar right now, what you get is an inflated asset price that isn't necessarily an indicator that true value has accrued to that asset. You simply are seeing the underlying currency being devalued, and that is what is driving the price up. Again, if you denominate your portfolio in Bitcoin and you look at all of the financial assets that you own, S&P, Dow, NASDAQ, commodities, bonds, real estate, whatever, if you go and you look at those assets denominated in Bitcoin, what you are likely to see is that those assets are actually down in Bitcoin terms, but they're up in dollar terms. And so it starts to beg the question, how good of an investment are these assets actually if most of the value accrual has not been from true value being created, but instead because the currency in which they are denominated has been devalued at an incredible rate? What do you guys think about the fact that literally just look at the S&P 500 is just falling off a cliff?
Yeah, I think
it's in a nosedive.
We talked about it the other day, and I'm curious, like when I asked you where you thought Bitcoin was going to be, right? Like whether it's 10, 20, 50 years from now. And your answer was mostly revolving around like, we're going to stop pricing things in US dollars or whatever currency it is. And you're going to look at things in Bitcoin and how much it costs in terms of Bitcoin. So like, how long does that take though, right? And does that filter down to everything? Is it just, hey, I'm going to buy this coffee at the store or the shop? Or is it home prices? Is it the S&P? Is it stocks in general? Is it real estate? Does it filter down to everything? And how long does that take?
You're saying how long will it take for the dollar to be the currency in which people would denominate things?
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. It depends on the geography first, right? So I think that there's two places where it's going to happen. One is on the internet for sure, right? If you think of Bitcoin rising to be the global reserve currency of the internet, I think that is already underway. There are some places that will say, hey, you can buy our good or service in dollars or in Bitcoin, and they'll price it in Bitcoin terms. So I think that'll start to happen in kind of a digitally native environment. The second place I think is not in the developed world, but in the developing world, in places like El Salvador and Nigeria, etc., where people basically say, listen, this is a currency that I save in. It is the global store of wealth that I use. And so if I am going to use this as the purchasing power protection, then it makes sense for me simply to just denominate the goods or services in Bitcoin as well. But I think it goes kind of digital, global, then it goes developing world, then eventually it'll permeate into the developed world. The key part of this is I don't think that it has to be 100% adoption of Bitcoin, right? You can look today, like there is a very big difference between a digitally native business and an analog business. So let's look at a different type of technology. How many restaurants have mobile apps? Really, probably not as many as you would think, right? From a penetration standpoint. How many of them use online ordering? More and more today than ever before, right? How many of them are digitally native, where they're all over social, they have apps, they have online ordering, etc. Those are the new versions. It's going to be the same exact thing with economies, right? Some economies are going to be super digitally native. Guess what? The internet, the global economy is going to be the most digitally native, right? That it's born there, it was bred there, it will stay there. But then the developed worlds are actually likely to leapfrog the developing worlds will leapfrog the developed worlds, right? Look at mobile banking. If you think of a number of different African countries, they have better mobile banking infrastructure than we have here in the United States. Why? It's because every single person that started out in the banking system, their first entry point was with mobile banking. They didn't have a legacy bank system and then like, oh, by the way, we have this new app, you should download it and then it'll allow you services from the legacy system. No, it was all built from scratch, mobile first, because that was the only technology that they had available to them. And so you would literally onboard, create an account, fund the account, spend out of it, et cetera, all on mobile. That mobile system is way better than here in the United States. We also see in places like Asia. If you go to Asia and you look at the kind of financial infrastructure there, it's light years ahead of the United States, right? They're using QR codes, they're checking out. The whole idea of being able to tap, not swipe or insert, but tap, that's been pervasive there for a very, very long time. We're just now getting that in the US over the last 2 or 3 years.
We didn't even have QR codes at restaurants before the pandemic, right? Like to scan for menus and stuff. And that's been prevalent in other countries forever.
Yeah, so I think that you just naturally you're going to get the digitally native kind of economies are going to adopt this stuff first. What I will say is I have been shocked that more people have not opened their eyes to the idea of denominating financial assets in Bitcoin. It's really coming out of like the most hardcore of the Bitcoin community. That's where you're starting to see this happen. And what I think is going to start to enter the conversation is if I am a digitally native young person for the most part, and I denominate my life in Bitcoin or any other digital currency, right? For Bitcoin is the example I use because that's where I spend my time, but it could be any of these things. Why would I then go price assets in dollars? Those assets being the stock market or bonds or real estate or commodities or any of this stuff. It doesn't make sense. My personal reserve asset is Bitcoin. So why would I then go use somebody else? It would be like us in the legacy world saying, hey, I get paid in dollars, I save in dollars, I invest in dollars, and I pay my government taxes in dollars. But when I look at the financial markets, I'm going to denominate everything in pesos.
Yeah.
You'd be like, wait, what? Like, I got to do the conversion. Like it's just confusing. So instead, what's going to happen is we're going to start getting what I'll call like investor-led or demand-led pricing of assets in non-fiat currencies, because people are going to say my personal reserve currency is not a fiat currency, and therefore I want to price these assets so I can measure over time what is the movement of this asset. If you look at that S&P 500 chart, who would invest in that? If I didn't tell you what the asset was, and I said, hey, by the way, here's the performance over the last decade. Do you want to buy this asset? The only way you buy this chart is because you think something has changed and it's now bottomed and it's going to reverse and go the other way.
Well, I think it scares a lot of people too because this is how the chart looks, right? So if you look at Bitcoin, it's appreciated so much over the last decade or so that it scares people when you start pricing things in Bitcoin because the divergence is so great. But when you think about some people are getting paid in Bitcoin, right? You can pay your mortgage in Bitcoin, you can save in Bitcoin, you can do all these things, right? So when you start seeing it as kind of that currency of the future that you were talking about with the US dollar, of you getting paid in it, saving it, paying the government, doing all these things, you can quickly see why some people would adopt it. And to be fair, like there's probably thousands and thousands of people who are doing this currently, right? Like you said, you do it personally and you've been doing it for the last few years of just in your head or whatever it is, denominating everything in Bitcoin before you make a purchase, before you save, before you do something. So there's already thousands of people doing this. It's just a matter of rolling it out to a bigger scale as Bitcoin gets adopted.
I think that's right. John, what do you think?
It's going to be a transition, right? It's not going to be an overnight thing. You see this already, even the United States, dating back to the last 20 years. I've seen, right? You see a USD price and then right under it, you'll see a price in Canadian dollars. You see a lot of different things, and it's going to go digital. I agree with that. It's going to go to developing countries first because they're most likely to adopt the innovation. And to be honest, US is normally a little slow for change in that aspect of it. And then I think we'll see it here in the United States, whether that is Bitcoin or any other digital currency. We're going to see it, whether they create a central bank coin or whatever, right? You're going to see it, but it's going to take a while to happen.
This is why I've been saying Bitcoin is the apex predator of financial markets. It's because no matter what the financial asset is, if you denominate it in Bitcoin, it's down over the last 5 or 10 years. And the reason why it's down is because we have watched the best performing asset absolutely eat markets. It's an apex predator. It eats everything in its path. Every single financial asset that you put in front of Bitcoin, it absolutely destroys it. And the reason is because we are watching a fixed supply asset be priced by the world. And what is happening is that the macro environment is so egregious, it's so chaotic, it's so uncertain, it's so manipulated that people are saying to themselves, where can I go where I have certainty and I have predictability? And they're finding it in Bitcoin. And so you've seen a absolute massive amount of capital flow into the market. And that market now has priced this asset at around $1 trillion, almost $1 trillion today for Bitcoin. And so when you go from 0 to $1 trillion over a 12, 13 year period, and then you use that as your base currency and denominate other assets in Bitcoin, it destroys everything. That is why Bitcoin is the apex predator of markets, is because every single asset has to bend the knee at the feet of the king. What's up, guys? Bang, bang. Thanks so much for watching the Best Business Show today. If we're going to be the best business show, we obviously need the best partner. That's why the exclusive sponsor of the Best Business Show is SoFi. They're an all-in-one platform that allows you to invest in all kinds of different assets, including stocks, ETFs, crypto, IPOs, and they even have an automated investing function, if that's your thing. So before we start getting after it again, make sure that you go download SoFi, you get an invest account, and when you make your first crypto trade, regardless of what you buy, they'll give you $10 in Bitcoin for free. It's that simple. Head on over to SoFi.com/pomp to get started today. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope that you come back and watch more of the Best Business Show tomorrow.